There comes a time in life when the relationship between parents and their adult children begins to shift. Have you ever looked at your child, the same child you raised with sacrifice and unshakable love, and thought, why do they talk to me like this? Not with gratitude, not with kindness, but with coldness, irritation, silence. There comes a quiet moment in many parents' lives not marked by shouting or slammed doors, but by something even harder to bear: disconnection. They brush off your thoughts. They roll their eyes. They stop listening. And suddenly you realize, I don't feel respected anymore. You didn't become a parent for applause, but being treated as though you're irrelevant that wounds deeper than words. And yet there is hope. There are ways to regain the respect you deserve. Not by begging, not by yelling, but by understanding what's really happening beneath the surface and shifting how you show up. Sometimes the very things we do to hold on to love, over giving, over accommodating, avoiding conflict, can actually erode the very respect we're trying to protect. We don't mean to, but unconsciously we repeat behaviors that quietly teach our children, you don't have to treat me well, I'll still be here. Today we're going to explore 6 powerful shifts you can make when you feel disrespected by your child. They're not about controlling your child's behavior. They're about reclaiming your inner authority, your calm dignity, your emotional independence. Because respect doesn't begin with their apology. It begins with your decision to stop living in the shadow of their approval. And before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you listening from? And are you currently facing any challenges with your children? Feel free to share in the comments so I can listen and offer helpful advice in future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video, because your support helps us continue bringing healing psychological insight and real-life wisdom to families everywhere. Let's begin with the first one. Stop seeking their validation. This is one of the most common traps older parents fall into, trying too hard to gain their children's approval. Maybe you recognize this in yourself. You stretch yourself thin to accommodate their preferences. You say yes when your heart wants to say no. You prioritize their comfort over your own, hoping that if you give enough, they'll notice and appreciate it. But here's the difficult truth. The more you chase after their approval, the more it slips away. Respect doesn't come from overextending yourself, it comes from holding your own ground. When you constantly yield, constantly try to smooth things over, what you're really doing is teaching them that your feelings don't matter as much. And once that idea takes root, it becomes all too easy for them to overlook your needs. I once met a retired teacher named Helen. In her younger days, she was fiercely independent and had a strong sense of who she was. But as time went on, she let her grown children take the lead in every area of her life. She would cancel her own plans to fit into theirs, rarely spoke up when something hurt her, and let their dismissive tone slide. "I just want to hold the family together," she once said to me. But what actually happened? Her children stopped seeing her as someone with a voice. She became, in their eyes, the one who always yielded, always went along, always stayed quiet. She thought she was keeping harmony, but in truth she was fading from view. If your children have started to treat you with less care, the first step isn't to demand better, it's to show that you expect better by how you treat yourself. Draw clear lines. Say no when something doesn't sit right with you. Speak your truth even when it's uncomfortable. Because once you begin to honor your own needs and value your own voice, others will take notice. And slowly the respect you've longed for will begin to return. The second action: don't get pulled into arguments. When your child disrespects you, talks over you, dismisses your opinion, raises their voice, it's natural to want to push back. You might feel the urge to correct them, to defend your choices, to remind them of all you've done. And sometimes that urge builds into frustration or even anger. Before you know it, you're in a heated argument, saying things you didn't plan to say and walking away more hurt than before. But here's the truth: arguing almost never leads to respect. It leads to exhaustion, distance, and regret. Why? Because when you meet their disrespect with loud emotion, you're unintentionally handing them the power to control how you feel. You're showing them that they can shake you, rattle you, even define your self-worth with a single comment. That doesn't earn respect, it invites more of the same. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly changed their view of you because you out-argued them? What shifts people, especially children, is not words. It's presence. It's when you stay calm, measured, and grounded in the face of tension. It's when you pause, breathe, and respond rather than react. That doesn't mean you tolerate everything. It means you choose to respond from a place of inner stillness, not wounded pride. You might say, "I'm happy to talk when we're both calm," or "I'll continue this conversation when it's respectful." And then you step back. No drama, no lecture, just quiet strength. Over time, this does something powerful. It unsettles the emotional game your child is used to playing. And eventually it earns you something words can't: credibility. Because a parent who doesn't fight to be respected often becomes the one who is. Action 3 is about stepping back from emotional dependency. One of the most difficult truths that comes with aging is realizing that your emotional well-being cannot be anchored to your children. Of course, you care for them deeply, and it's only natural to hope they return that love and respect. But when they sense that your sense of worth hinges on their affection or attention, something changes. The balance in the relationship begins to tilt. Here's the plain truth. Even your children tend to respect those who maintain their emotional independence. When you look to them for reassurance, for signs of appreciation, or just for a sense of being needed, they begin to feel a kind of pressure. That pressure can easily turn into discomfort. Instead of feeling thankful, they may start to feel overwhelmed. They might distance themselves. They may even become short-tempered or indifferent. And the more you pursue their love, the more elusive it becomes. There was once a man named George. He had worked hard his entire life and had always put his family first. After retiring, he found himself with plenty of time and a longing to stay close to his children. He waited each evening hoping for a phone call. When none came, he started calling them, sometimes daily. He told them how quiet the house felt, how much he missed their company, how he hoped they'd stop by more often. But rather than drawing them in, it had the opposite effect. They began to see those calls as something they had to respond to, not something they wanted. Then something shifted. George stopped reaching out first. He redirected his attention to himself. He joined a local book club, took up gardening, and even signed up for a community fitness class. Slowly, things changed. His children began to call. They asked about his new hobbies. They started seeing him not as someone waiting in loneliness, but as someone living fully. They began valuing his time and his presence. And that's the heart of the lesson. When you stop depending on your children to feel useful or loved, you free them from the weight of expectation. In that space, true connection can grow. They begin to appreciate you, not because they feel they have to, but because they want to. They see your strength, your independence, your ability to thrive, and they respect it, not out of duty, but out of genuine admiration for the life you've chosen to live. Step 4 is about drawing clear lines and standing by them. One of the main reasons children grow to disregard their parents is simply because the parents let it happen. When you permit your children to speak to you with disrespect, to ignore your thoughts, or to act as though your time and emotions are insignificant, they'll keep doing it. Not because they're cruel or heartless, but because people, especially family, will generally treat you in the way you've shown them is acceptable. Establishing boundaries doesn't mean turning your back on your children or stirring up arguments. It means choosing in a steady and composed way the kinds of behaviors you will and will not tolerate. And more crucially, it means following through when those lines are crossed. I recall the story of a man named Harold, a retired engineer who had spent decades managing high-stakes projects with authority and poise. Yet, when it came to dealing with his grown children, he found himself at a loss. They would cut him off mid-sentence, brush aside his concerns, and even question the way he chose to live his retirement. At first, Harold put up with it. He reasoned that keeping the peace was more important than confronting them. But as the years passed, he came to see that by keeping quiet, he was sending a message that their treatment of him was acceptable. Then one day, Harold decided things had to change. When his son interrupted him during a conversation, he looked him in the eye and said, "I'll continue when you're ready to hear me out." When his daughter disregarded something he replied gently, "You don't need to agree with me, but I do expect respect." And when the boundary pushing continued, he was clear if they couldn't offer him the basic decency of mutual respect, he wouldn't continue to make himself available for those conversations or visits. And what came of it? They began to take notice. It wasn't immediate. At first, there was pushback. But gradually, they saw that their father meant what he said. They came to understand that he valued himself enough to require respect, and in turn they began to give it to him. If your children are treating you poorly, it may be time to stop and reflect. Could it be that you've been allowing it? Because if you don't create boundaries, they won't magically appear. And if you won't defend your dignity, no one else will do it for you. If you're still listening and these ideas are resonating with you, I warmly invite you to leave a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our upcoming reflections. Your support helps us keep creating meaningful content. Let's keep going together. Let's move ahead. The fifth action is to stop giving when there's no appreciation. As parents, we often give without keeping count. It starts from the very beginning: diapers, late nights, school projects, scraped knees, silent sacrifices. Giving becomes second nature. You don't expect thanks for every little thing. You give because that's what love does. But somewhere along the way, the giving starts to feel different. It no longer feels like love, it feels like obligation. And even worse, it starts to feel invisible. You keep showing up. You offer help. You send money. You rearrange your schedule. You answer every call, even at inconvenient hours. You drive them across town. You watch their kids. You drop everything when they ask. And yet, there's no thank you. No recognition. Sometimes not even a smile. Instead of feeling appreciated, you feel expected. Instead of being seen as generous, you're treated as available. And when you finally need something support kindness time, you find yourself alone. Waiting. It's a difficult truth to face. The more you give without boundaries, the more people assume it's owed. And the more they assume it's owed, the less they respect what you're offering. Giving should be an act of love, not a slow erosion of your self-worth. But don't misunderstand, this isn't about becoming selfish or withholding. It's about restoring balance. Start by asking yourself, am I giving because I want to, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I stop? Do I feel appreciated or used? Have I taught them that my love comes with no limits, no boundaries, no recognition, and then gently begin to shift? Instead of always anticipating their needs, wait for them to ask. Instead of saying yes by default, pause and check in with yourself first. Instead of stretching yourself thin, learn to say, I can't help this time, but I trust you'll figure it out. Will they be confused at first? Probably. Maybe even upset. But over time, something will change. They'll begin to notice your yes again because it's no longer automatic. They'll start to value your time because they'll realize it's not infinite. They'll remember that love given freely is a gift, not a guarantee. And here's the quiet miracle. The more you honor your own worth, the more others will begin to do the same. You are not an endless resource. You are a human being with needs, energy, and limits. Give from overflow, not from depletion. And give only where your love can land on ground that still knows how to say thank you. Now to the sixth action, create a life outside of them. One of the strongest ways to regain respect from your children is to let them see that your happiness doesn't depend entirely on them. If you've spent decades centering your life around your children, you're not alone. Most parents do it. It's what love does. You rearranged your dreams, your time, even your identity for them. And for a long time, that felt right. But what happens when your children grow up and you don't? What happens when they build lives of their own, and you're left circling a space that once felt full, now painfully empty? For many parents, the silence becomes unbearable. Not because they dislike being alone, but because they never built a life beyond their role as mom or dad. They waited for visits, for phone calls, for text messages that didn't come. They hoped their children would continue being their emotional home. And when that didn't happen, they didn't just feel lonely. They felt lost. Here's the truth. No one tells you. Your children are not responsible for your fulfillment. They're not your emotional plan B. They're not meant to be your purpose forever. And when you expect them to be, when you rely on them for company, joy, and meaning, they don't lean in. They pull away. Not because they're ungrateful, but because it's heavy. They feel it, the pressure, the weight of your unmet needs, and it scares them. So if you want to restore respect, if you want to shift how they see you, begin here. Start building a life that is yours, not to prove anything, not to guilt them, but to become full again, to remember who you were before you were everything to everyone else. Sign up for a class, start a garden, join a book club, travel, volunteer, reconnect with friends, learn to paint, go to the movies alone, laugh, dance, create something that has nothing to do with being a parent and everything to do with being you. Will it feel strange at first? Yes. Will it feel selfish? Maybe. But as you do this, something begins to shift. Your children start to see you again, not as someone who's waiting for their affection, but as someone who is already alive. They start to admire your joy, your independence, your light. They call not because they feel obligated, but because they want to be near that light. You become magnetic, not because you demanded their attention, but because you reclaimed your own. And in that space, something sacred happens. They begin to look at you with fresh eyes, not as the person who gave everything up, but as the person who found themselves again. And they respect that deeply. Because the most powerful kind of love isn't the one that clings, it's the one that glows. And after all, you might be wondering, if I know these things don't work, why do I keep doing them? Why do I keep giving when I feel unappreciated? Why do I stay quiet when I want to speak up? Why do I overextend, over-explain, over-accommodate when it always leaves me feeling small? The answer isn't that you're weak or unaware. It's that these behaviors were learned a long time ago, and for a while they probably worked. Maybe you grew up in a home where keeping the peace meant staying quiet. Maybe being useful was how you stayed needed. Maybe being agreeable was how you stayed loved. These patterns didn't come from nowhere, they were survival strategies. But what helped you feel safe in the past may be hurting your dignity today. And here's the quiet truth. Most of us carry these habits into adulthood without realizing it. We don't mean to lose ourselves in our children. We don't plan to silence our voices for the sake of harmony. We just slip into old roles, hoping they'll protect the love we cherish most. But love built on self-erasure isn't love, it's fear. And when fear runs the show, respect quietly leaves the room. The good news is this. The moment you begin to see the pattern, you're already changing it. Awareness is the first step. Choice is the second. You don't need to become someone new. You just need to return to the part of you that knows your worth even without their approval. In the end, respect isn't something you can force your children to give. It's something you awaken in them by how you carry yourself, by the limits you set, and by the way you choose to live. If you've noticed a shift, less kindness, less regard, less thoughtfulness, don't drain yourself with anger. Rethink your path. Stop trying to win their approval, because the moment you no longer rely on it, you begin to receive it naturally. Let your actions be your message. Dignity has a way of speaking louder than any plea. Ease back from emotional reliance, because the more grounded and independent you become, the more your presence commands respect. Set clear limits, because people tend to treat us only as well as we expect them to. Refrain from giving endlessly without acknowledgement, because when generosity is met with indifference, it slowly loses meaning. And above all, cultivate a world beyond them, a life filled with your own joys, your own purpose, your own peace. Others take notice when you live with fulfillment that doesn't hinge on their attention. When you begin to walk this path, something quietly powerful happens. Your children start seeing you differently, not as someone waiting in the shadows for their affection, but as someone whose presence carries weight and quiet confidence. And gradually, that respect begins to return, not because you demanded it, but because your very being made it impossible to withhold. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. If you've made it this far, it tells me something important. You're not just listening, you're reflecting, maybe even beginning to shift something within yourself. And that matters more than you know. These aren't easy topics. Speaking about feeling dismissed or unappreciated by our own children can stir deep emotions. But I hope today's reflection reminded you of one quiet but profound truth: your worth doesn't depend on who sees it. It begins with you seeing it in yourself. Every small change you choose to make, from setting a boundary to reclaiming your voice to building a life beyond the roles others have placed on you, is a step back toward your own dignity. And you deserve that. You deserve to be respected, not for what you've given, but for who you are. Not someday. Now. Before you go, I want to say thank you. Your time, your presence here, it means something. It means we're building something real together, a space where honesty, healing, and self-respect can take root even late in life. So I invite you to come back. Join me again. There's so much more we're going to explore together, more questions to ask, more clarity to find, more strength to uncover. If today's message spoke to you, please consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. And if you know someone who could use this reminder, maybe a friend, a sibling, someone walking through this same season of life, feel free to share this with them. Take good care of yourself, And until next time, remember, you are not alone and you are not invisible. You are still becoming. And the journey ahead is worth walking with your head held high.